This is the ultimate celebrity conspiracy theory time capsule. We are going to be going through some of the most popular conspiracy theories of the last 100 years, decade by decade, and seeing what were popular conspiracy theories about different celebrities at the time, what ended up being true, what ended up being false, I don't know. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with the 1920s. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is Rudolph Valentino's cursed ring. So in the 1920s, Hollywood was still young and fresh. It was a new idea. It was full of possibility. The movies were silent, but the stars were larger than life. And one of the most adored men in the world at that time was Rudolph Valentino. He wasn't just an actor. He was the face of romance. People were in love with him. He was like the first Hollywood sex symbol ever, and basically a cultural phenomenon that transcended borders. Women fainted in theaters just seeing this man. But within all the glitz and glamour, there was a long-running conspiracy theory about a piece of his jewelry. So Rudolph Valentino had a gold band set with a tiger's eye stone, and it was very beautiful, but yes, it was said to be cursed. The story of Rudolph Valentino's cursed ring is one of the first ever celebrity conspiracy theories in Hollywood history. And now, 100 years later, people still talk about it to this day. So the story goes that around 1920, Rudolph Valentino was shopping in an antique store in San Francisco when he came across this beautiful gold ring with a tiger's eye stone at the center. The shopkeeper actually warned him and said that ring has brought nothing but bad luck to anybody who's ever owned it. Reportedly, Valentino smiled and said, "Then it's perfect for me," and he bought it on the spot. Which, why would you? I don't know why he did that. That's a little sketch in my opinion. I don't know. I'm scared of antique shops, honestly, for that reason. And legend has it that the moment he slipped this ring on his finger, his luck began to change. His next film was a complete failure, a rare flop in his career. Around this time also, his marriage to Natasha Rambova began to crumble under the pressure of fame and scandal. Critics mocked his masculinity. Newspapers ran jokes questioning his sexuality, etc. And the media really just started to absolutely turn on him. What was once a so well-desired actor and successful was now just being mocked and made fun of and having flop movies. And then in August of 1926, Valentino was promoting one of his films and he suddenly collapsed in New York City. Doctors discovered that he had an ulcer that had developed into an infection of the abdominal cavity, and just like that, at 31 years old, the world's most famous man was now dying. For days, newspapers reported hourly on updates on his condition. Fans gathered outside of the hospital. Women wept openly in the streets and just waiting for the word that he might somehow recover. But unfortunately, on August 23rd of 1926, Valentino passed away. The day of his funeral, tens of thousands of fans flooded Manhattan. Chaos broke out. People fainted. Several women were reported to allegedly attempt to take their own lives. The grief was so intense that the press literally called it mass hysteria. So rumors began to swirl instantly that the ring that Valentino purchased was cursed and caused his death. And what's freaking scary is it didn't stop with Rudolph Valentino, okay? Like, the first person to inherit the ring was a woman named Paula, who was rumored to be Valentino's fiance at the time of his death. And overcome with grief, she took the ring as a keepsake, but soon after she became gravely ill and hospitalized for months. And her once promising career began to fade. Next, the ring was passed down to Russ Columbo, who was a singer and actor who bore a striking resemblance to Valentino, and Paula, Valentino's ex-fiance, allegedly said that she gave it to him because he was the second coming of Rudolph. In 1934, Russ Columbo was accidentally shot and killed by his friend while visiting a photographer's home. So these eerie coincidences really just began to pile up. So then the ring went to Joe Casino, who was a friend of Columbo's, and Casino kept it locked in a glass case, claiming that he was too afraid to wear it. But after several years, curiosity finally got the better of him and he slipped it on, and within a week, he was struck and killed by a car. Then the ring was passed down to Joe Casino's brother, Del Casino, who also refused to wear it, but misfortune followed from the ring anyway, and during a burglary, one of the thieves who stole it was shot dead by the police with the ring still in his pocket. And now this cursed legend has become a part of Hollywood folklore, floor, and people claim that anyone who even touched the ring is doomed. And the story still didn't end there. In the 1940s, an actor named Jack Dunn was preparing to star in a biopic about Rudolph Valentino, and as part of a publicity stunt, Jack Dunn borrowed the original tiger's eye ring to wear for photos, and within weeks he was suddenly dead of a rare blood disease at 21 years old. This was allegedly the final straw, and the ring has been reportedly sealed in a vault in Los Angeles where it still remains to this day. I don't like that. I don't. It's interesting to me to hear about conspiracy theories that existed during the time that it happened, if that makes sense. Like, obviously there's conspiracy theories that happen in real time that we talk about, like current pop culture conspiracy theories, but we have social media. We have ways to convey this information besides like tabloids and like word of mouth. It's interesting to me that this had become such a big conspiracy theory in Hollywood that everyone heard about it and that they literally permanently locked up the damn ring. That's sketchy, and I 100% believe it, and that's why I will not buy anything from an antique store. Okay, I'm scared, unless it's Kim's Antiques in Star Hollow. Now we're gonna be moving on to the 1930s and talking about the mysterious death of Thelma Todd. So Thelma Todd was a very popular Hollywood actress at the time, and on the night of December 14th, 1935, Thelma attended a lavish party hosted by director Stanley Lupino and his wife, actress Ida Lupino. She arrived in high spirits, she dressed in white satin, she was drinking champagne, chatting easily to friends. Nothing was out of the ordinary, and according to witnesses, she was her usual cheerful self. Around 2 a.m., her chauffeur, Ernest Peters, drove her home to the cafe that she co-owned with her business partner and rumored lover, director Roland West. Her chauffeur claims that he dropped her off at the bottom of the long winding staircase that led up to her apartment above the restaurant, and she told him she'd let herself in and she was fine and good night. And that was the last time anyone saw Thelma Todd alive. 2 days later, on December 16th of 1935, a maid named May Whitehead discovered Thelma Todd's body slumped over in the front seat of her car, parked in the garage of Roland West's home, just a few blocks above the cafe. She was wearing the same white satin evening gown for her party, her makeup was still intact, and a mink coat was draped around her shoulders. The engine wasn't running, the windows were rolled up, and Thelma Todd was dead. The coroner's report ruled her death as an accidental carbon monoxide poisoning. The official narrative was very simple, and people just like didn't accept this. Investigators theorized that Thelma, possibly locked out of her apartment after the party, tried to sleep in her car to stay warm, and she apparently left the car running, and she succumbed to the carbon monoxide in the enclosed garage, which is a plausible conspiracy theory if you don't look at some of the things that just don't add up here. For one, her shoes were completely scuffed up, so that would indicate that she climbed this steep hill from the cafe to the garage by herself, which is an exhausting feat, especially for a woman in heels, late at night after several drinks. The garage door was also closed from the outside, and the position of her body didn't align with someone who had merely just like fallen asleep. She also had a deep bruise on her lip and blood in her mouth, and people claim that there were marks on her throat consistent with a struggle, and her nose was broken. That doesn't happen from just a carbon monoxide poisoning. Yet the autopsy itself listed no significant external injuries whatsoever, and that was when conspiracy theorists really started to question what happened here, because there was just so much misinformation and misunderstanding and things that just didn't add up overall. A lot of people believe that Thelma Todd was actually murdered and then her body was staged to look like it was an accident. So obviously fingers first pointed at Roland West, who was Thelma's business partner and sometimes lover. They had a tumultuous relationship full of shouting matches that their neighbors corroborated and said happened all of the time. And a lot of Thelma's friends claimed that he was super overbearing, jealous, and controlling. And a waitress who worked at the cafe that they owned even said that Thelma told her that Roland would kill her someday. So I mean, there's that. There was a man named Lucky Luciano who was a New York mob boss who had been expanding his operations in Los Angeles, and he was known to frequent at the Sidewalk Cafe, and that's where like the rumors kind of spread that he wanted to use Thelma Todd's business as a front for illegal gambling, and Thelma obviously reportedly refused, and therefore she was murdered. According to a lot of Thelma Todd's friends, she claimed that she had made powerful enemies, and some of her friends even say that Luciano directly threatened her, but who knows? And this was definitely one of the biggest conspiracy theories at the time, but ultimately her death was ruled an accidental carbon monoxide overdose, even though, again, there were a lot of things here that just didn't add up, and a lot of people think the mob was involved or her boyfriend's business partner could have been involved in some way. I want to hear your guys' thoughts though, because this has been a long-running, obviously, conspiracy theory for many years, and I do think it is strange. All right, we're moving on to the 1940s, and we're going to talk about the Black Dahlia. So this is one of Hollywood's darkest unsolved mysteries. To this day, people still talk about it, and I wanted to kind of find the narrative during the time that this actually happened and what was really going on here. So of course, in January of 1947, a young woman and a hopeful actress was found brutally murdered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. Her body was posed, drained of blood. It was revealed the Black Dahlia was actually a woman named Elizabeth Short. She allegedly had moved to Los Angeles to chase her Hollywood dreams, and she began renting a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard and was working as a waitress while pursuing acting opportunities, just like a lot of people come here to do. So on the morning of January 15th of 1947, a woman and her 3-year-old daughter were walking in this Los Angeles neighborhood and found Elizabeth's body. The scene was obviously very grotesque. She was posed in a very theatrical and horrifying way. She looked like she was always smiling, which is so creepy and so horrible. And of course, the headlines absolutely exploded here. So the narrative around this time was definitely one of terror. It was basically like Hollywood's dream machine was producing all these victims and hidden sex deals and gangsters and corrupt cops. Like, there was mass hysteria around this, really. And rightfully so, because there was some really shady shit going on at the time. And a lot of people believe that Elizabeth Short was murdered by a Hollywood insider. A lot of people thought that she had romantic liaisons with powerful men and links to the film studios, and also cross connections with corruption that was going on in the police department. And given Hollywood's closed world and the culture of like the secrecy at the time, that it's theorized that Elizabeth Short got too close to the truth. Overall, the case of the Black Dahlia definitely scared the hell out of people in Hollywood at the time, and a lot of people saw it as a warning to not be digging too deep into these Hollywood circles and dealing with these elite people and people who might, and Hollywood insiders, celebrities, whatever you wanted to call them at the time, mostly like producer side of things. And if you got involved with these shady people, terrible things could happen to you, and obviously they did. And it's just so scary. I can't even imagine like living in Los Angeles during this time. It must have been terrifying. Okay, we're gonna move on to the 1950s. So one of the biggest conspiracy theories from the 1950s, similar to Rudolph Valentino's ring, is James Dean's cursed spyder Porsche. So everyone knows the actor James Dean, and in 1955 he purchased a Porsche 550 Spyder, and it was named Little Bastard. And almost immediately the people around James Dean claimed that this car just had a bad energy. Actor Alec Guinness, who later on went to play Obi-Wan Kenobi, met James Dean outside of a restaurant just a week before his car crash. And when James Dean showed him his Porsche, Alec reportedly stepped back and said, "Please never get in that car. If you do, you'll be found dead within a week." And then he was. So what do you mean? So on September 30th of 1955, James Dean's Spyder crashed, and the scene was horrific. He obviously ended up passing away, and he was just 24 years old at the time. But this was really just the beginning of the curse. After the crash, George Barris purchased what was remaining of the Porsche Spyder for $2,500. He planned to salvage the parts and display the wreck as a cautionary exhibit about road safety. But strange things began happening once he was in possession of the wreckage. While he was unloading the car at his garage, the car slipped from its trailer and crushed a mechanic's leg, and George Barris ended up selling the engine of that car to 2 doctors named Troy McHenry and William Esmond, both amateur racers. And during a race, McHenry's car, using the Porsche engine, spun out of control and hit a tree, killing him instantly. And William Esmond's car, which contained other parts of James Dean's Porsche, suddenly seized up mid-race and caused it to roll over and injure him severely. George Barris claims that every major component of that car carried carried its own misfortune. He says that a thief who tried to steal the steering wheel was burned badly by the sparks when it short-circuited. He claimed that a delivery truck that was transporting the car caught on fire, destroying nearby vehicles, and the spyder was loaned to a different highway safety exhibit, only for the building to burn down weeks later. And then in 1960, while being shipped to yet another exhibit, I don't know who the hell wants this at their exhibit, the little bastard vanished entirely. The truck driver reported that the car mysteriously disappeared somewhere between Miami and Los Angeles, and to this day, it was never recovered and nobody knows what happened to it. And that's how this whole legend was born about how the car that killed James Dean went on to kill anyone who touched it. And I don't like it. I don't like it. And I wonder what happened to the car. How did it just disappear? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? All right, we can't talk about the 1960s without talking about the biggest conspiracy theory probably of all time, which is about JFK and Marilyn Monroe. So during the 60s, of course, there was a lot of conspiracy theories circulating and rumors about Marilyn Monroe's alleged affair with President John F. Kennedy. And then once Marilyn Monroe passed away, there was so much conspiracy theory and question on what actually happened to her and why she died, and could the Kennedys be involved, because she was not only having an affair with JFK but also Bobby Kennedy. So she was having an affair with two of the most powerful men in America, and according to a lot of people surrounding Marilyn Monroe, she claimed to know some very big secrets about the government and was planning on exposing them, because Bobby Kennedy said he was going to marry her and then he was just like, no, we're actually breaking up, and that is allegedly why Marilyn Monroe was killed. I think this is probably the biggest conspiracy theory that came from the 60s, and it makes sense because obviously Marilyn Monroe was such a huge public figure. Everyone talked about her, everyone knew who she was, and her legacy was just clouded with scandal and alleged affairs with the president and his brother, and it's just so nuts to me how much was happening at the time. I wonder what it was like to actually exist during this period of time. I'm gonna call my grandma and ask, honestly, because what did they think? Were they just like, yeah, Marilyn Monroe is just, I think she's having an affair with the president? It's kind of nuts. I also just think that Marilyn's legacy, at least to me, really shows the potential corruption in the government, because a lot of people who were close to her claim that she was gonna be in trouble for betraying men in high places, and she was going to expose the Kennedys and their affairs, and etc., etc. And then she just winds up dead. And she also claimed that her phone was tapped, she was being followed, all of these crazy things that the government was allegedly doing to her, and then she just died. So I don't know. I think it's one of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time, and that came from the 1960s. All right, moving on to the 70s. One of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time is the idea that Elvis Presley is still alive. So obviously Elvis Presley passed away on August 16th of 1977. I do think Elvis is still alive. I mean, not even still, I don't know. There's a whole conspiracy theory that I believe that I've done several videos on, and you can watch that if you want. But essentially the narrative during the 70s was also the same. So many people just couldn't believe that the king was dead. They didn't want to think it. So conspiracy theories absolutely flooded the tabloids at this time, where people were claiming to have seen Elvis. There were hundreds of thousands of Elvis sightings in the years following his death, and so many people genuinely believed the conspiracy theory that Elvis was still alive. I mean, to the point it was even referenced on Full House. I actually remember when like Uncle Jesse like met Elvis, but then it was like obviously an impersonator, but I genuinely thought that was Elvis as a child. So I was like, okay, so he's still alive. He was just with Uncle Jesse. But I think overall this conspiracy theory is a pretty popular one, and it's interesting to me that the fans at the time were also conspirizing about it. Like obviously I was not born yet in the 70s, so I just assumed that this was like conspiracy theory that happened later with social media, and like people thought that he was seen in the freaking Home Alone movies, etc. I think it's interesting that actually during the time, like after Elvis died, people were immediately talking about conspiracy theories and believed that he was still alive. I just think that's kind of cool that conspiracy theories have really not changed. All right, speaking of conspiracy theories not changing, in the 1980s was when the theory about Hollywood making a deal with the devil came to be. So during the 1980s, there was truly like a satanic panic, which was just everybody being scared of like the Church of Satan, Satan in general, how Satan was recruiting people through pop culture, and how Hollywood had made a deal with the devil, and that everything in Hollywood was just villainous and evil. It's interesting because I always wondered when that theory came up, and apparently it was the 80s. A lot of this revolved around heavy metal music in the early 1980s. Bands like Black Sabbath absolutely dominated the charts, and their music was loud, aggressive, and often laced with like kind of a dark supernatural imagery, if you will. Like Ozzy Osbourne was known as the Prince of Darkness. Like he bit a head off of Bad on stage. There was just some crazy shit. A lot of lyrics around the time were talking about death and freedom and rebellion. Highway to Hell was obviously a popular album, and to a lot of their fans it wasn't like a huge conspiracy theory, and people thought it was more metaphorical in a sense. But people's parents, like the teenage fans' parents, thought it was prophecy and thought that that meant the devil was coming to Hollywood. Religious groups ended up claiming that music was part of a coordinated effort to indoctrinate the youth to Satanism, and that is all where it started, was the 1980s. I always kind of wondered where the whole selling your soul to the devil, deal with the devil thing kind of came from. And it's interesting that to me that it came from all this like 80s rock music that was obviously dark, and people's parents hated the fact that their kids were listening to this, and they took it and ran with it and turned it into something that it probably wasn't. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. I thought it was very interesting that that's kind of where the idea of like, not the Illuminati, because obviously that's like a longer running conspiracy theory, but the idea of like the devil in Hollywood came to be. Next, we're moving on to the 90s. So in the 90s, there were 3 deaths that sparked some of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time. We're briefly going to talk about them because we've talked about them a lot, but that is Biggie, Tupac, and Princess Diana. So with Tupac, a lot of people thought that his death was faked and that he was faking his death and that he's still alive somewhere out there to this day. People still think that. Whereas Biggie's death honestly has a lot of conspiracy theories as well. Well, first of all, a lot of people thought Tupac was murdered by P. Diddy in a sense. There's literally someone who confessed to killing Tupac and said that P. Diddy paid him to do it. So interesting. So Diddy ran Bad Boy Records, which at the time, the opposing record label, the one to beat, was Death Row Records, which is what Tupac was signed to. So a lot of people think that Tupac's death was orchestrated by P. Diddy and or Bad Boy Records in general. I don't know. I've always thought it was kind of true, but what I do think is more interesting, because Biggie was in fact signed to Bad Boy Records and he was friends with and dealt with P. Diddy majority of his career. I think it's more interesting because a lot of people think that Suge Knight killed Biggie because they thought Suge Knight, the owner of Death Row Records, retaliated, killed Biggie after Tupac died. But I do think it's a little bit more of an interesting theory that P. Diddy knew that this was going to happen to Biggie, that knew that Suge Knight was going to plan this and this was going to happen, and he kind of just let it slide. There's like a lot of dark conspiracy theories involved in that, and honestly I've done several videos, so you can check them out if you want, but this video is getting a little long, okay? And then of course Princess Diana's death has been one of the most speculated conspiracy theories of all time, rightfully so, because she died in a tragic car accident, but a lot of things just didn't add up. A lot of people think that the British royal family was involved, or the British government. A lot of people think it's because her boyfriend at the time, Dodi Fayed, who also died in the car crash, because he was Muslim, the royal family didn't want that. And also Dodi Fayed's father has claimed repeatedly that Princess Diana and Dodi were pregnant, and the royal family did not want a Muslim child to be introduced into the royal family and have, you know, royal siblings, etc. And I've always thought that that was true, and that there's definitely something suspicious about Princess Diana's death, but I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts because it was for sure one of the biggest conspiracy theories of the 90s. All right, now we're moving into the early 2000s, and I think my favorite conspiracy theory from the early 2000s is that Britney Spears was a puppet to basically hide what the Bush administration was doing at the time. So in 2007, Britney Spears was having very public meltdowns. She was having a public divorce, custody battles over her children, and basically paparazzi was following her everywhere. She shaved her head, she chased someone with an umbrella. You know the drill if you were here. It was a time. It was a moment. And it was all anybody was talking about. But it was also simultaneously the same time that the Bush administration was doing some shady shit. People have really had this long-running conspiracy theory that Britney Spears' public breakdown was used as a distraction from the Bush administration and all of the shit that he was doing at the time. And I low-key believed this theory. I mean, at least I don't know if I necessarily think her crash out and her, you know, mental health issues were because of this or like implanted on her, but I do think that the media definitely used this as a distraction, and I think they use kind of everything as a distraction still to this day. Any big pop culture news, yeah, they're gonna take it and run with it. I believe this theory. I don't know. I want to hear you guys' thoughts because I think it's interesting. Now we're moving on to the 2010s. This is when the Beyoncé Jay-Z Illuminati theory really popped off. So the 2010s definitely was filled with conspiracy theories around the Illuminati and celebrities being involved in it. I would say the Illuminati, of course, is a long-running conspiracy theory, but the concept of everyday celebs that we love being a part of it and having various symbolism in their music videos or live performances, that really became a thing in the 2010s, and it really focused on Beyoncé and Jay-Z specifically. I don't know why they became specifically the like ringleaders of the Illuminati. Like everyone thought that they were the king and queen of the Illuminati, okay? I don't know. I've never really thought that that made sense personally. Like I kind of think it just was a conspiracy theory that was taken too far. Not that I don't believe in the Illuminati or that I don't believe that there are celebrities involved with it. I just think that the people who run it are definitely not like Beyoncé or Taylor Swift. Like it's like people you don't know. The faceless billionaires, the studios, the music producers, all of that stuff is to me the more interesting side of the Illuminati, in my personal opinion. All right, now we're moving on to 2020s. So there have been so many conspiracy theories over the last 5 years, but when I hear 2020, I obviously think of COVID. And one of the biggest conspiracy theories that I've seen is the idea that celebrities in the beginning of COVID pretended to be sick with COVID so that everyone would calm down, realize that everything was gonna be okay, because these celebrities got COVID and they ended up being fine. And it was kind of used as a tactic to control the narrative and make it seem like COVID was more under control than it actually was. And I 100% believe this theory, allegedly. I just think it's so interesting, especially the conspiracy theory that we recently talked about with Tom Hanks. I think it's interesting that him and Rita Wilson like got COVID in the early days and everyone was talking about it, but they ended up being perfectly fine. It did feel reassuring to see people that we know. Idris Elba, there were so many different celebrities that we saw have COVID in the early stages that honestly, it did make it feel comforting to see these people that we know being okay in such a terrifying time as those like first couple of months of 2020. I believe this theory. I do. I think it makes a lot of sense. I also think celebrities, like obviously, like yes, they probably were around more people just naturally filming things, etc. But even in the early stages, like a lot of filming was paused. It's interesting to me that they were the ones that ended up getting COVID and kind of documenting their journeys with it for all of us to see and kind of feel more calm about. And I do think that that could have been planned. Not that they like in the sense of they maybe didn't have COVID at all. I don't know. It's alleged. Anyway, this video is getting very long, so that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know any conspiracy theories that you think I missed over the past century of different theories. But that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.